Let's try to see relational model constraints, some of the advanced concepts where we are going to see about the different types of relational model constraint. So constraints are very much important to understand whenever we are going to learn about the RDBMS concepts or anything related to the SQL databases. Constraints are really helpful for implementing the business rules or whatever the rules which we are having whenever we are going to design any ER diagram or database tables. We need to understand some business rules, and there are some types of constraints which are nothing but like entity integrity constraint, referential integrity, semantic integrity, domain null, and check constraints. So all these things are we are going to see one by one in detail now. The very first thing is entity integrity constraints. Now, when entity integrity constraint means, so this is an example of author table where we do have author ID, last name, first name, email, city, and country are these columns. And if you see this first column, which has two null values, like first is null and then last value is also null. What entity integrate ensures that whatever the primary key cannot be null. So this is one integrity constraint which are applied to this particular table. So suppose someone tries to insert some values in this particular table and put primary key as empty or null, then it will throw an error. So that is something which is called as an entity integrity constraint. Now, referential integrity constraint is something which is defines the relationship between the tables, and it ensures that they remain valid. That means there is a relationship between this book and author. That book is authored by this particular author or someone who has written that particular book, and they're having their relationship like one-to-one relationship. So referential integrity constraint will check whether these relationships are valid or not. So that is something which is checked by this referential integrity. Now the third type is semantic integrity constraint, where in semantic integrity constraint it will just check what are the values which are entered in the table are accurate or correct. That means suppose this in this city we are expecting all character values like these values in alphabetical only. However, someone tries to insert some special characters as well, then it will throw an error if you have a semantic integrity constraint implemented. Now the next type is domain constraint. In the domain constraint as well, suppose this is something which is this country is a column which is expecting alphabetical value or some specific value. So it doesn't allow numerical values, but it should just only accept only alphabetical values. So domain constraint allows only permissible values. Null constraint is something, suppose some of the columns will have some constraint which will just make sure that it should not be made as a null. That means some of the like first name and last name, suppose for it should not be null. So if there are some nulls, then it will throw an error. So it will just make sure that every column has some values. Check constraint is something which enforces the domain integrity by limiting the values accepted by the attribute year. So it may be something specific to that particular year, then it can be possible with this check constraint. So this is what we have seen different types of integrity constraint, and this constraint are very useful to keep our database tables values correct, store values very well and without any issues, so that it will be helpful to keep our integrity of the data in place. I hope you like this, and we will see you in the next lecture.